We need Kong.
Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Josh. Welcome back to our toy review, and today we're here to take a look at the Godzilla vs. Kong with Battle Axe. Alright, so of course, before we move on with the review, just to kind of backtrack just a little bit from last time, we went over the Godzilla with Radio Tower figure, and that was, honestly, how long ago was that again? Oh. Okay, so anyway, yeah. So just to kind of reiterate a little bit, basically these figures came out back in like 2020 or so. Obviously, this was during the hype of the Godzilla vs. Kong film, and we all know it was meant to be this huge big battle between Titan and Titan. It was also the fourth film in the Monsterverse, with the previous one being Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then of course the second one being Kong Skull Island. So of course we need to explain that a little bit, because the Monsterverse obviously, you know, kind of introduces us to this brand new version of Kong, and that's the big thing a lot of people don't seem to talk about as much, is that he's no longer called King Kong, he is now just Kong, since this new iteration of the character is somewhat different from what he was in previous incarnations, meaning this is not, you know, like the same like the 1933 Kong or anything like that, not even the Percy Jackson's Kong. You get the idea. This one is a little more simple but different. So of course, obviously, you know, his whole backstory is that he was from, you know, Skull Island and all that. He used to have a whole bunch of other giant monkeys just like him, but then they all died. The island is full of like a whole bunch of different monsters. The most infamous one being skull crawlers. So obviously, yeah, you can kind of get where that is. So of course, in the film, it's discovered that he's like under like this weird kind of dome thing. He's being pretty much, you know, getting an eye watch from Monarch. Basically, you know, keeping an eye on him ever since the rise of Titans, you know, from, you know, King of the Monsters and all that. And, you know, goes on a whole mission to discover the Hollow Earth. And I won't go too much into the film. I'd rather you guys watch it, because it's a very, very interesting Monsterverse film for sure. Even though it's unfortunate that it's a lot of people's, like, not favorite for some reason, but I don't know. And then, of course, it's also the origin as to where he got his axe from. But let's not jump too far ahead. Let's go ahead and take a look at the figure right here. So of course, once we take a look, sculpt wise, obviously, kind of has that sort of Playmates feel to it. Obviously, you know, it's very basic for what it is, but it's still rather nice, especially with how he's formatted. And of course, you could get a whole bunch of articulation, you know, different kinds of poses going on here, which is very nice. He's very agile, not like as agile as like future figures, but you kind of get the idea. And of course, the texturing with the fur, it's a little bit on the rough spot. That's the only thing here, you know, because it feels very like plasticky. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, you could tell that it's fur, but like it looks weird, you know, like it just feels like, you know, just a whole bunch of plastic just splattered on there. I don't know how to really explain it, but it's not bad. Don't get me wrong, it gets to the point, you know like how he looks and all that. And I do love the paint that they try to, you know, the paint job with some of the blacks and all that, to try and sort of represent the idea of fur, even if it's not translated 100%, but this is still really good for the most part. And of course, we gotta talk a little bit about his face, because unlike Godzilla's, where he just has that very weird derpy look to it, this version, as you can see, has like a very angry type face. He got his mouth open and all that, and of course he got his teeth. It's slightly on the whiter side. It's a little bit hard to kind of explain a little bit with the mouth portion. I mean, in my camera, it looks a little yellowish, but when you look at the actual figure, it's not as yellow as it's showing. I just thought I'd kind of mention that. I do like that they at least painted the mouth, so that's good. You know, at least they painted like his tongue and all that. Of course, that's good attention to detail. And then if we look at the eyes, I don't remember if his eyes is supposed to be that kind of orange color. I'm not too sure. I know they did the same thing with Godzilla, where his eyes were like kind of orange as well, which of course was questionable because he doesn't really have orange eyes. So of course that was like a very weird like decision made on the Playmates part, but I mean, it is what it is, because everything else about the figure is great, just not that. But for the most part, at least with Kong, it's actually a lot more better. And of course, I do want to talk a little bit more about sculpting and all that. As you can kind of see here, I love the fact that he's very articulated. Oh, did I forgot to mention that this is actually my very first Monsterverse figure I've ever gotten? Yeah, weird, right? I mean, remember, this figure came out, of course, during the pandemic where, a lot of people had to, like, be vigilant when they go out and stuff. So, of course, a lot of these action figures were very scarce. These were originally Walmart exclusives, but luckily they don't do that no more. They don't do that whole exclusive thing, except for maybe, like, certain, like, like specials, like 2-packs, or like certain figures like the Titan Evolutions and all that. We won't get too far into that because that's like new figures based off of the new film. Of course, we're talking about the ones based off of the last one. Honestly, that's what I like a lot about the figure, is that he has a whole like playing field to it. Like, you could like do whatever you want with him, unlike with Godzilla where he's very limited in his mobility and his articulation, but it's hard to really argue with it. I think what happened with Kong, obviously, is that he's meant to be like very like agile at best. You could definitely get him into a lot of great poses and all that. It's a little bit hard, obviously, because of the feet. They're kind of sort of flat, but not exactly. I mean, obviously, you guys kind of get how it goes. When he stands up, he looks pretty good. He looks nice. When you get in a pose, obviously, it's a little bit hard, because of how it is. As you can kind of see, I'm struggling a little bit. But it could be done. It could be done, ultimately. So, I'm not going to argue with it. It's not an execution done wrong. It's, working with what they got with the character's design. And then, of course, I'm going to go a little bit back with the paint. Because, of course, I do like how, I can't tell if the chest area was sprayed. It shows, like, the nice blackness towards his pecs and all that. Obviously, the only questionable thing is the scarring, because it just kind of looked like they just sort of painted it on there. It's not like an actual sculpt or anything. It's just, like, you get what I mean. You can feel just pretty much the figure itself, but not the scars. So, just I kind of point that out there. And, of course, we look around in the back again. And of course, what I like about the paint is it has sort of like a weird sort of shade to it, because you'll notice that pretty much on his entire back, it's just brown, like just plain brown. A little bit of a nice shine and a gloss. It's not super glossy. No, it's not like that. It just has just a tiny bit of a shine to it, but that's about it. And of course you got the front showing off, how he looks. I really do love the angry face on him. I definitely think is one of the best aspects of it, is his expression, which is very nice. So of course this figure has a lot of very nice details. Pretty much everything is, well, spectacular so far. I haven't really seen any kind of issues to complain about yet. So of course, I guess before we talk about his only accessory, let's talk about his action feature, because yes, that's right, these figures actually do have a weird gimmick. They got the battle damage feature, in which you can literally tear apart his skin, like ooh. Kids, if you're watching this, be careful, this might be graphic. Ooh, there we go. So you see, you could kind of split up, his little chunk of meat right there. That looks pretty gross, I know. Honestly, when I pose him on my shelf, I always keep it off anyway, just to kind of show that he's in battle mode and he's getting brutally injured by Godzilla. I mean, have you seen the film? Like, come on now. That's why I don't want to talk about it too much, because I'd rather you guys watch them, just how interesting they are. I also do love how it kind of blends in with the, I forgot what you call that. Like you'll notice how, like, if I put it back on, well, I'm going to try and put it back on. There we go. For some figures, it's easy, but for some of them, it's not for some reason. It kind of disguised that little bit right there. Like, you see, like, the little thing here where they got to insert, like not the peg, but you get the idea. Damn, it's, you get what I mean. I like how it kind of blends that a little bit. And it's not revealed until you rip off a piece of his shoulder. That's pretty cool. And it's not, like, decorated in any way. It's just painted red. So I guess that's his muscle, I guess? I don't know. It's a pretty weird feature. I mean, I like it because it helps create variety within the figures, because as awesome as this toy line is, the only bad thing about it is that they do reuse the hell out of these sculpts a lot. So at least it's like, hey, you could kind of pose them however you want. Do you want the piece off? Do you want it on them? Do you want to, like, some figure they kind of do it, differently. So like I said, if I try to insert the piece back in, Obviously, as you can see, there's this little piece of plastic right there. I don't know if you could, there we go. It's supposed to show like how you're really supposed to put it back on. You're supposed to start with that piece first and then push it in, and then as you can see, it's very easy. But for some odd reason, for some figures, it's really not that easy. I remember Godzilla being slightly difficult. So as you can see, I'm going to bring him out here. He has battle damage in his chest. So you see with him, I could kind of get it out. Like, you see how super easy that is? But trust me, for the other ones, it's really not that easy. So I just thought I'd kind of let you know, because I think it was when I bought the Hollow Earth 2 packs, that, you know, based off of the last film, Godzilla vs. Kong. I remember with Godzilla, it was extremely hard just to get that piece out. Or I think it was vice versa. I think I was trying to insert the piece back in, but I just had such a hard time doing it. I just gave up until I eventually put it in. I don't know, it was like a while ago, it was a couple months back, because that 2-pack was unfortunately a Target exclusive, but it is what it is. So now let's go over his weapon, the Battle Axe. Now we need to talk a little bit about this, because the Battle Axe has a very weird history. I remember people getting worried that this was like very spoiler heavy, because if you actually watch the film, well, spoiler alert, I guess, you would know that he didn't really get this weapon until like a little bit towards the end of the film, where he used it to fight against Godzilla. So I remember though, this was shown in the first trailers and stuff, so I don't think this was like a complete spoiler. I don't know. I think it was pretty much known at this point that he had a weapon. And the weapon itself is very weird, because a lot of people have speculated that this was supposed to be like Godzilla's like spinal piece, you know, his fins. And I mean, if we do the comparison, I mean, obviously it's not gonna look, you know, it has the impression, but I don't think it's meant to be the exact same. They don't really explain it in the film itself. He just kind of finds it in like this weird layer, where I guess we're supposed to presume that there was like a whole race of like Kongs and Godzillas that fought each other at one point. So yeah, it's very unique, honestly, because very rarely do we have a kaiju character that has its own weapon that they can wield. The only characters I can really think of that has done that, of course, is with the Mechagodzillas in the old Toho films. Specifically the one from the Heisei and the Millennial era, you know, with Kiryu and Super Mechagodzilla, where they had like those giant cannons on their backs. For Godzilla fans, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's probably more characters too that wielded weapons and all that, but I'm just particularly talking characters from the Toho era, you know, so we're not talking like Ultraman and all that. So of course, if we put the axe in his hand, you'll notice that he has only one open hand, or a gripping hand, so you could kind of slide it in there. I forgot to mention, it is made of a sort of soft plastic, not too soft, but at least soft enough to where you could kind of fit it. So let's see, we could get it in there. So, I mean, it fits rather nicely. Like, he hangs on to it. The only bad thing is that his hand is a little bit too open to where it does kind of wobble a bit. Just a little bit, not by much, but like still. That's the only downside with it. You can still do some nice stuff with it. You can still make them like wield and all that, like, you know, swing it around. So that's great. I also forgot to notice that this thing is basically like a giant bone. That's pretty cool. All right. Very creative. The straps, however, I mean, I don't remember. I don't think they were painted in the film. I don't know. I mean, at least they had the courtesy to at least paint it, the sharp parts, but, you know, everything else, I don't think it's supposed to be just one plain brown color, but from what I remember from the film, I mean, it was like a while ago. But for the most part, it does look pretty cool, and it looks nice when he's wielding it. That's kind of his whole thing, obviously, you know, is the giant axe. So, yeah, and then, of course, the other hand, he, you know, I mean, he can't wield it with both hands. Even if you try, you can't really do it. The least you could do is, like, you know, just pat it down, you know, make him hold it, like, however you want it. You know, like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, of course, you could kind of, you know, if you want to, you know, and it fits nicely, you know. At least it's not like with Scar King, where, like, I remember his weapon, I was flailing it around until it just literally flew out of his hand. No offense to that figure. That figure's awesome, too, and we will review that at some point. So I guess one last thing I literally forgot to talk about before we end the video is the articulation. Alright, so he has about 11 points of articulation, so of course he can move the head. You could pretty much move it full 360 if you wanted to. I mean, it's not like with Godzilla where, like, you can move it. however you want, but there is a little bit of force there, and I really don't want to break this figure because these figures were pretty hard to find during its time, trust me. Yeah, and then, he can move his arms around, as you can see, you know, and they're not loose. They're actually pretty sturdy for the most part. I mean, obviously, if I swing him around and stuff, his arms will move around, so there's that. Although his legs are pretty strong, though. Like, they move. Ooh, like, Colin, you better be careful there, buddy. Wow, that has to be painful. There you go, just to kind of show, got the monkey booty, there you go. And, yeah, so finally, there we go. Let me stand him up nice and tall, and then we're gonna start doing some size comparisons. So let me put him right there. So, of course, let's compare him to, well, what else? Godzilla. There you go. So obviously, the sizing, I think it makes sense for the most part. I mean, I know Godzilla should be maybe slightly taller, but this is actually perfectly fine for what it is. I mean, obviously, if you look at him straight, I mean, it's like, wow. But it looks pretty cool, don't get me wrong. I think it matches up very perfectly, at least for me. I think it gets the idea, even if it's not entirely perfect, but I think it's still really cool seeing them side by side. So of course, why not? This doesn't have to be just about the Monsterverse. We could also compare him to other stuff. I mean, here he is compared to Bandai's Ultra Monster series Twin Tails. Yeah, just to kind of get an idea, because giant monster, you know what I mean. And I'm pretty sure I did review this figure already. I just still got to review the rest of the Ultraman stuff. So for you Ultraman fans out there, don't worry, those videos are coming. So then of course we also got something completely random. Yeah, so let's the Chimera monster from the first Resident Evil video game. This was of course made by Toy Biz during their heyday, like the late 90s or so. I would love to review these at some point, but I'm just kind of waiting a little bit until we start to grow, because I know I've been on hiatus for a while, so for me to review something completely weird and wacky, that's gonna have to take a while. So of course let's take a look, as well as wait, well, what's that? What's that? What's that noise? What's with the music? I mean, come on, whoa, He-Man, hold on, wait a minute. You'll get your review soon. Wait in line. Jesus. Alright, so I guess the next figure we'll take a look at next time. Here's a little preview. It's the Godzilla with Heat Ray. Yeah, as you can see, obviously, it has the whole... yeah, we'll talk more about that in the next review. So, of course, that kind of ends it here. So for the most part, my final thoughts, I give it like a solid 9 out of 10. I think what the figure tries to achieve, it gets it down right away. It's very perfect. It's a very fun figure, and the features, of course, makes it very cool and unique. Obviously, the thing with the wobbly axe, that's a little annoying, but that's pretty much the only issue, honestly. I mean, I wish they would have worked a little bit more on it. But now that I think about it, I probably shouldn't be giving it a score now, because, well, with the new movie, that passed already and all, Playmates is still making figures, and, here's something interesting. They recently announced a updated and much more better version of the Kong with Battle Axe. Yeah, I mean, that was a bit unexpected for that reveal, but alright, it is what it is. More toys is always great, right? And of course, for the record, there's no release date for it yet. It was just like recently, teased in a lot of like leaked photos from some random toy website. Yeah, so of course that's about it for now. Thank you guys for watching. I know it took forever to continue this series of Monsterverse toy reviews, but now that we're finally back on track, we'll definitely take a look at them. There's a lot to cover, really. So, yeah, welcome back. And until then, thank you guys for watching, and peace out.